The alien and I were foes. But in that moment, only our arms could keep us alive. Sworn enemies Mira Voss gripped the controls of her stealth vessel, sweat beading on her forehead as she maneuvered through the asteroid belt surrounding Nexus 7. The Federation intel had been correct. The Syndicate's most notorious assassin was here, and Mira had been hunting her for 3 years. Commander Voss, target vessel detected on approach vector, her ship's AI reported. Matching signature of the Phantom. Mira's jaw tightened. Kyle Zara, the purple-skinned Lumidari assassin, had evaded capture across 12 systems, leaving a trail of diplomatic incidents and high-profile murders. Their last encounter had left Mira with a scar running from her collarbone to her shoulder, a reminder of how dangerous underestimating the alien could be. Intercept course. Weapons hot, Mira ordered, brushing her auburn hair from her face. Intelligence work had never been her first choice, but after the Lumidari Syndicate's attack on New Terra, she'd volunteered for this assignment. It was personal now. Across the void, aboard the sleek black vessel named Phantom, Zara studied the approaching Federation ship with luminescent violet eyes. Her translucent purple skin shimmered slightly in the dim light of her cockpit, the bioluminescent patterns along her arms pulsing with annoyance. The persistence of this human is becoming tiresome, she murmured, her voice melodic yet cold. 3 years of cat and mouse across the galaxy had taught her to respect Commander Voss's abilities, if nothing else. Humans were typically predictable, but this one had a cunning that reminded Zara of her own people. She flexed her fingers over the weapons array. Perhaps today we end this game. Neither woman anticipated the solar flare that erupted from Nexus 7's unstable sun. The electromagnetic pulse hit both ships simultaneously, shorting systems and sending them spiraling toward the planet's surface. Mira fought the controls as emergency warnings blared. Mayday! Federation intelligence vessel Artemis requesting immediate. The comms died as her ship plunged through the atmosphere. Zara's more advanced vessel fared marginally better, but the Phantom's engines failed as she entered the upper atmosphere. She managed a controlled descent toward a rocky plain, watching as the Federation ship crashed several kilometers away. Both women survived their landings, emerging from their damaged vessels into Nexus 7's harsh environment. The planet's violet sky crackled with electricity, its atmosphere charged from the solar activity. Toxic vegetation swayed in the caustic winds, and in the distance, storm clouds gathered ominously. They approached each other across the barren plain, Mira with her pulse pistol drawn, Zara with her energy blade humming softly. Commander Voss, the Lumidari assassin said, her voice carrying despite the wind. It seems fate has a sense of humor. Zara, Mira replied, keeping her weapon trained on the alien. By authority of the Galactic Federation, you're under arrest for... A deafening crack interrupted her as lightning struck between them, sending both women stumbling backward. The storm was approaching faster than either had anticipated, the sky darkening to an ominous crimson. Zara's skin patterns flashed in alarm. The magnetic storm. We need shelter. Her eyes met Mira's. Your ship or mine? Neither will withstand that, Mira said, holstering her weapon reluctantly as she observed the approaching wall of energy. There's a ravine to the east. It might offer some protection. Another lightning strike, closer this time, made the decision for them. Sworn enemies, they began running side by side toward the distant rock formation as the deadly storm closed in behind them, a deadly necessity. The ravine provided minimal shelter as Nexus 7's magnetic storm unleashed its fury. Violent purple-hued lightning struck the planet's surface with increasing frequency, each impact releasing waves of deadly energy that rippled across the ground. Mira and Zara pressed themselves against the rock wall, watching in horrified fascination as the storm intensified. This isn't just a storm, Zara said, her violet eyes reflecting the lightning. The planet's magnetic field is destabilizing. These energy waves will kill us if they make direct contact. As if to confirm her words, a bolt struck nearby, sending a pulse of energy racing toward them. Mira felt her skin tingle painfully as it approached. Move, Zara suddenly shouted, grabbing Mira's arm and pulling her deeper into the ravine. They stumbled into a small alcove just as the energy wave passed, the air crackling where they had stood moments before. The space was tight, barely large enough for both of them. The rock here contains magnetite, Zara explained, her breath warm against Mira's cheek. It partially shields from the energy pulses, but we must stay close to maintain the protection. How close? Mira asked, suspicion edging her voice. Another violent strike answered her question. The energy pulse that followed was so intense that both women instinctively reached for each other, arms encircling in a tight embrace as the deadly wave passed around them. This close, Kelzara whispered, her purple skin illuminating the space between them. For hours, they remained locked together as the storm raged. Each time an energy pulse approached, their embrace tightened. Mira found herself studying her enemy's face, the delicate purple features, the bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to her emotions. So alien yet somehow beautiful. Your heartbeat accelerates when the pulses come, Kelzara observed, her hands pressed against Mira's back. You fear death, doesn't everyone? Mira replied. My people view death differently. It is merely transformation. Despite her words, Kelzara's grip tightened as another pulse approached. Though I admit I am not yet ready for that transformation. As night fell, the temperature plummeted. The storm showed no signs of abating, and their sheltered position became as much about survival from the cold as from the energy pulses. We should find a more permanent shelter, Mira suggested through chattering teeth. Kelzara nodded, her own body trembling slightly. There's a cave system approximately half a kilometer north. If we time our movements between pulses, we might reach it. The journey was harrowing. Each dash between protective outcroppings required precise timing and, inevitably, clinging to each other when the energy waves came. By the time they reached the cave entrance, both women were exhausted and covered in superficial burns where the energy had grazed them. Inside the cave, they collapsed against each other, gasping for breath. Neither immediately moved to separate. Why didn't you leave me behind? Mira asked suddenly. It would have been easier for you alone. Kelzara was silent for a long moment, her luminescent patterns pulsing slowly. Perhaps I've hunted you too long to watch you die by any hand but my own, she finally replied, but there was no malice in her voice. As they settled into the cave, arranging what supplies they had salvaged, Mira caught herself watching the aliens' graceful movements. This woman was responsible for dozens of deaths, Mira reminded herself. She was the enemy. Yet as another night on Nexus 7 approached and the deadly storm continued its assault, Mira reluctantly acknowledged that their survival depended on each other. Enemy arms had become her lifeline in this hostile world. Whispers in the dark. The cave offered better protection than the ravine, but the temperature continued to drop as Nexus 7's long night progressed. The storm outside had settled into a rhythm of intense bursts followed by eerie calm, like the planet itself was breathing. Mira shivered as she inventoried their meager supplies. 2 days of rations, 1 functional communicator with no signal, and a medkit that's seen better days. Kelzara was examining the cave walls, her purple skin casting soft light on the ancient rock formations. These minerals will help shield us from detection, both from the energy pulses and any scanning technology. You sound like you're planning to hide, Mira observed. The Lumidari turned, her expression unreadable. Aren't you? Neither the Federation nor the Syndicate would approve of this arrangement. They gathered combustible materials and created a small fire. As they huddled near its warmth, the awkwardness of their situation became impossible to ignore. Hours earlier, they had been trying to kill each other. Now they were sharing body heat to survive. Why did you join the Syndicate? Mira finally asked, breaking the silence. Intelligence says you were once a respected scientist. Kelzara's luminescent patterns flickered in surprise. Your files are thorough. She was quiet for a moment before continuing. I specialized in cross-species medical applications. My research could have helped millions across all races, including humans. What happened? The Federation happened, Kelzara said, but without her usual venom. They classified my research as a potential bioweapon and shut down my laboratory. 3 years of work confiscated. My colleagues arrested. Her patterns dimmed. My lifemate was among them. She died in Federation custody. Mira stared into the fire. I didn't know. Of course not. The Federation excels at burying inconvenient truths. Kelzara looked up. And what of you, Commander? What drives a promising officer to chase a single Lumidari assassin across the galaxy? Mira hesitated. then reached for the collar of her uniform, pulling it aside to reveal the full extent of the scar that Kelzara had given her. But beneath it was another older scar, a burn that covered most of her shoulder. "New Terra," she said simply. "I was stationed there when the Syndicate attacked. I pulled 16 children from the burning research facility. Couldn't save the 17th. Her voice cracked slightly. Later I learned the facility was researching lumidary biology without consent. Another inconvenient truth. The silence that followed was different from before, heavier with understanding. "We've both been pawns," Kelzara said finally, her voice soft. Mira nodded. Different sides of the same corrupt game. A violent energy pulse hit near the cave entrance, causing both women to instinctively reach for each other. This time when their arms wrapped around each other. The embrace felt different, less desperate, more comforting. "Tell me about your home," Mira whispered, her face inches from Kelzara's. The lumidary's patterns brightened. "Lumida is primarily ocean. Our cities float on the surface during calm seasons and submerge during storm cycles. The light from 3 moons creates colors your human eyes cannot perceive. It sounds beautiful." "It was," Kelzara said, sadness evident in her voice. "Before the resource wars. Before we became valuable for the minerals in our skin rather than the knowledge in our minds." As the night deepened, they continued to talk about their childhoods, their dreams before war had consumed them, the small pleasures they missed from normal life. With each story, the space between enemy and ally blurred further. When sleep finally claimed them, they remained in each other's arms, no longer from necessity, but from a comfort neither was ready to acknowledge. An unexpected connection dawn broke on the 3rd day, bathing the cave in pale lavender light. The storm had temporarily subsided, though the sky still crackled with residual energy. Mira woke to find herself still entwined with Kelzara, their limbs intertwined in a tangle of warmth. For a moment she simply watched the alien sleep, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the subtle pulsing of the luminescent patterns across her purple skin. It was difficult to reconcile this vulnerable woman with the notorious assassin she'd hunted for years. When Kelzara's eyes finally opened, revealing those striking violet irises, Mira didn't immediately pull away. "The storm has calmed," Kelzara observed, her voice husky from sleep. "We should survey the damage and check our vessels." They ventured outside, keeping close in case the energy pulses returned. The landscape had been transformed. Crystalline formations had sprouted where lightning had struck repeatedly, creating an otherworldly garden of violet and blue structures. "Beautiful and deadly," Mira murmured. "Like many things on this planet." Kelzara glanced at her, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "A poetic observation, Commander. Their ships had fared poorly. The Federation vessel was beyond repair, its communication array completely destroyed. The Phantom had survived better but required parts they didn't have. We could combine components," Kelzara suggested, as they catalogued the damage. "Your navigation system with my engine core might create something functional enough for orbit." They worked side by side, shoulders brushing as they salvaged usable parts. When Mira sliced her palm on a jagged piece of metal, Kelzara took her hand without hesitation. "Be still," she instructed, pressing her thumb gently against the wound. A warm sensation spread through Mira's hand as the lumidary's skin released natural healing enzymes, a small benefit of our biology. "Thank you," Mira said, startled by both the gesture and the tingling warmth spreading up her arm from the contact. By midday, dark clouds gathered again on the horizon. They hurried to collect the salvageable components and returned to the cave just as the first lightning bolt struck the plains. Inside, they laid out their findings. Enough to create a rudimentary distress beacon, but not enough for a functional spacecraft. "Someone will find us," Mira said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Eventually," Kelzara agreed. She hesitated, then added, "And then what becomes of us? Do we resume our roles? Hunter and hunted?" Mira looked away. "I don't know." The energy pulses began again, forcing them closer together. This time, when Kelzara's arms encircled her, Mira leaned into the embrace. "Your people believe touch transfer is part of the soul," Mira said quietly, remembering a detail from a cultural briefing long ago. "A simplification, but yes," Kelzara replied. "We believe connection creates understanding, that to truly know someone you must share physical space." Her fingers gently traced the scar on Mira's shoulder. I regret this. You were following orders. As was I. Orders that made us enemies when perhaps we should have been allies. Kelzara's luminescent patterns intensified, creating shifting patterns of light that reflected in Mira's eyes. I wonder what might have been different. The cave darkened as night fell, leaving only Kelzara's bioluminescence and the small fire for light. In the intimate glow, Mira found herself studying the alien's face, not as an enemy to be assessed, but as a woman to be admired. "What are you thinking?" Kelzara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering, Mira slowly reached out, her fingers hovering just above the Lumidari's cheek. Kelzara remained perfectly still, her breathing shallow as Mira's fingers finally made contact, tracing the luminescent patterns down to her jaw. "I'm thinking," Mira said softly, "that I no longer know who we are to each other." Kelzara's hand covered hers. "Perhaps we can define that for ourselves." When their lips met, it was like the energy pulses outside, electric, inevitable, and transformative. Kelzara's skin warmed beneath Mira's touch, the patterns brightening to an almost blinding intensity as they explored this new territory between them. Former enemies. They discovered each other anew, Mira marveling at the subtle textures of Kelzara's purple skin, Kelzara fascinated by the contrasting warmth of human flesh. Their embraces, once born of necessity, now flowed from desire, carrying them through the night as the storm raged unnoticed outside their sanctuary. New horizons. The rescue came on the 7th day. A neutral zone merchant vessel detected their makeshift beacon and descended through Nexus 7's turbulent atmosphere. By then, Mira and Kelzara had established a routine, gathering food from the non-toxic vegetation that grew in protected valleys, improving their shelter, and spending the storm-locked nights learning each other's bodies and sharing whispered secrets. They heard the ship's engines before they saw it, the sound alien after days of only the storm's fury and each other's voices. "That's not Federation or Syndicate design," Mira observed as they watched the vessel approach from the cave entrance. Kelzara's fingers intertwined with hers. "Independent trader, neutral, a stroke of luck." They stood in silence, both understanding what rescue meant, a return to reality, to the roles and responsibilities they had temporarily escaped. "We could disappear," Kelzara suggested quietly. "The Outer Rim colonies ask few questions." Mira squeezed her hand. "We'd always be looking over our shoulders." "We do that anyway," the Lumidari pointed out with a sad smile. The merchant captain was a grizzled Centaurian named Jorvik, more interested in potential salvage than in the politics of his passengers. He agreed to transport them to Halcyon Station, a trading post on the border between Federation and Syndicate space. Aboard his vessel, Mira and Kelzara were given separate quarters for the first time in days. The physical distance felt wrong after their time in the cave, like losing a limb. They met in the ship's observation deck that night, drawn together by an invisible pull. "I've been thinking about what happens next," Mira said as they gazed out at the stars. "About the information we both carry." "Dangerous knowledge," Kelzara agreed. "About Federation research programs. About Syndicate operations. Knowledge that could change things." Mira turned to face her. "What if we didn't disappear? What if we used what we know?" Kelzara's patterns rippled with interest. "You suggest becoming whistleblowers?" "I suggest becoming truth-tellers. Together." Mira took both of Kelzara's hands in hers. "Neither Federation nor Syndicate. Just us presenting the unfiltered facts to both sides. They'll label us traitors, put prices on our heads." "They already have a price on yours," Mira pointed out with a small smile. "And I've never been particularly good at following orders I don't believe in." Kelzara's luminescence brightened. "It would be dangerous. So is crossing a room during an energy storm." Mira stepped closer. "Sometimes the risk is worth it." As Halcyon Station came into view, a gleaming oasis in the emptiness of space, they finalized their plan. Using Mira's intelligence credentials, they would access secure channels to simultaneously broadcast evidence of corruption on both sides to all major systems. They would have minutes before both organizations realized what was happening, barely enough time to reach the station's independent shuttles and vanish into the lawless regions of the Outer Rim. "Ready?" Mira asked as they prepared to dock. Kelzara's answer was a kiss. brief but filled with promise. With you, always. The station was crowded, a bustling hub of traders and travelers from dozens of species. They moved through the throngs with purpose. Kael'Zara's hood hiding her distinctive features, Mira's uniform granting them access to restricted areas. In the communication center, Mira's credentials still functioned. They worked quickly, uploading data packets containing evidence of the Federation's illegal research and the Syndicate's civilian targeting. Transmission complete, Kael'Zara announced as the final packet sent. Estimated 3 minutes until detection. They ran, hand in hand, through service corridors toward the independent docking bays. Behind them, alarms began to sound as their broadcast reached its recipients. The shuttle was small but fast, its navigation system already programmed for a remote colony, where a former Luminary scientist, an old colleague of Kael'Zara's, had established a research facility dedicated to peace. As they cleared Halcyon's docking clamps, pursuit vessels were already launching. "They're not going to catch us, are they?" Mira asked, watching the station shrink behind them. Kael'Zara's hands danced over the controls, plotting an erratic course that would confuse their pursuers. "Not today," she promised. "And perhaps not ever." The stars stretched into lines as they jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the organizations that had once defined them. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the constant threat of discovery. But as Kael'Zara set the autopilot and turned to pull Mira into her arms, that future, however perilous, seemed bright with possibility. What had begun as survival, arms clasped together against deadly energy, had transformed into something neither had imagined possible. "Where to after the colony?" Mira asked, resting her head against Kael'Zara's shoulder. "Wherever the truth needs to be told," the Luminary replied. Her luminescent patterns created dancing lights across both their faces as she smiled. "The galaxy is vast and we have much work to do." As their shuttle disappeared into the depths of space, two former enemies, now lovers, partners, truth-tellers, embarked on a new mission. Not one assigned by faceless organizations, but one they had chosen together, in a cave on a hostile planet where survival had demanded they see beyond the differences that once divided them.